This is the third and final task in the unit. As you can see, you're required to write a reflective essay to demonstrate your learning against the unit aim. You'll find this unit aim in the unit information guide, and I won't read it to you now, but the most important part is the section at the bottom where it says the unit content establishes a framework for students to build their own perspectives of the nature and purpose of education. And that's really what this essay is about, to demonstrate or to convey your understanding or to talk about how your perspectives of the nature and purpose of education. So what do you think about that? What's informed this thinking? Who agrees and disagrees with you? How might this perspective influence your work as an educator in the future? If you can answer those questions in your thinking about the essay, you're already on a good trajectory to writing a cracking essay. So, as I said, your essay should demonstrate your ability to critically reflect on the topics presented in the unit, your wider reading, the text, your own lived experience, and your immersion experience if applicable. Don't force the immersion experience if it doesn't make sense. So if you end up taking a whole different track, then don't try and squeeze the immersion experience in there. Your essay should synthesize your understanding and ideas. It's really not a descriptive recount of the content delivered. That's really important to keep in mind. So the length is 2,000 words and it constitutes 50% of your grade. And as always in education, you'll be using the APA 6 referencing style. So, starting to think about the essay, I hope so. Preparing to write it. The first thing you need to do is to develop a thesis. You'll be talking about what constitutes a thesis in your tutorials and working through some ideas about that. After you've developed your thesis or you've got some idea about what your framework or your perspective of the nature and purpose of education is, then you're going to brainstorm, think about that thesis, plan some research, write a little bit about it, write down some ideas, edit that, refine your thesis, and go through this iteration, this cycle a few times just to make sure that your thesis is on point. Don't start writing your essay until you know you've got a really robust thesis. That's going to provide the direction for your essay and set you up in terms of what it is you're going to cover within the essay. As I said, the first thing to do is to develop the thesis. So what is a thesis? It's a clear statement or standpoint. It's about your perspective of the nature and purpose of education. As you can see from that little image, it's not a very long statement, usually 1 or 2 sentences. It's framed as a statement, not a question, and it clearly points out the subject or your perspective on that of the nature and purpose of education. It takes a stand rather than simply announcing the topic. So you might have lots of ideas about the nature and purpose of education, but you really need to just come down to 1 or 2 succinct sentences that really mean something to you. It will provide the focus for your essay and position and provide a position from which to start developing your supporting arguments. Once you've got your thesis, as you can see from this image, you can start brainstorming ideas that might build arguments to support the thesis. It's pretty much still a brain dump at this stage. There is no formal writing happening. You might like to use a mind map. Some people have different strategies for brainstorming, but you really need to do this work before you start off writing. You'll end up with too much information, but it does help organise your thinking. So if you start with the thesis and then use the content and topics across the whole unit to start developing ideas and arguments to support your thesis, again, you'll be well on track to have a really successful essay. Be prepared to be overwhelmed at this stage because you've covered a lot of ground in this unit. There's a whole lot to talk about. You're going to need to drill down to 3 or 4 key arguments to support your thesis and then let some of the other information go. So once you've decided on those 3 or 4 key arguments, as I said, it's important to you to start with those arguments and then go back to the content and see how they can build and support your argument, substantiate what it is that you want to say. So the evidence will be drawn from the learning materials and the other sources. So your arguments, we start to get to this point of what constitutes a critical reflective essay. So your arguments shape the what. They're the topic points, if you like, the concepts. The substantiating those with evidence drawn from the learning materials and other sources constitute the so what. So who agrees? Who says this is important? Who says it's not? And then you're going to link your argument to the thesis again in some sort of in some way to identify how or if these the argument could be challenged or transformed, and how it's shaping your thinking about your future work as a teacher or educator. Once you've worked through that process, the what, so what, now what, you will have started that cycle of critical reflection. Often essays stop at the what and the so what. In a critical reflection, you really need to go to that next stage and talk about now what? What are the implications for you as a teacher, for the children you teach, for society at large? Think about that statement. What does it mean to live well in a world worth living in? Once you've got all of that happening, and you can see there's a lot of work to do there, then you can start drafting your essay. Don't start writing until you've done all of this preliminary work. Think about and plan the structure, the introduction, the body paragraphs, the conclusion. Some common questions about writing the essay. Yes, you can write in first person, but limit that to where it's applicable. So if you're talking about lived experiences or personal reflections, yes, use your first person there. If you're talking about what other scholars are saying, then don't use first person. Don't include headings, dot points, tables, or images. This is an essay, an academic essay. It's not a report, so make sure that you avoid doing that. And as I said before, make sure you reference in text and construct a reference list following APA 6. Your in-text references and the reference list are not included in the word count. So here's a sample introduction. You're going to probably need to pause this recording to have a look at this, but you can see I've colour-coded the introduction to kind of give you some sense of what this particular person has done. So they've started their introduction with the thesis statement, and that statement is teachers play a powerful role in shaping lives. Although this role is shared with others, it is important for all teachers to understand how their educational practice influences the lives of others. So that's the thesis statement that this person has developed for their essay. Then in the introduction, as you know, it's always really powerful and helpful for the reader if you set out your arguments. You can see there are 5 arguments in this particular introduction, and again, I won't read those there for you. Let's look at a body paragraph now. And again, I know that's hard for you to read, and you're going to need to pause the video to see that, but you can see the first argument. It's important for all teachers to understand the many ways which their educational practice can influence the lives of their students. So that's the what. That's the topic sentence. That's argument 1. What this person has gone on to do then is to build the body paragraph around the so what, including references, key sources, lived experiences, and the most, really important is to kind of get to that now what, and often that happens at the concluding statement or the linking statement at the end of the paragraph. So this person has drawn on personal experience, in addition to the research outlined above, have led me to believe that it is important for all teachers to put the student at the centre of learning and teaching, of the learning and teaching relationship, to ensure education shapes the lives of students in a positive manner. So that's the now what. You can see that's getting to some sort of critical thinking, because it's applying the what and the so what to a personal statement about an aspiration as to what this person might like to do as a teacher in the future. Very important if you don't have to use the Peel system, but you do need to be careful about how you construct your paragraphs in an academic essay. This is one very neat and tidy little way of thinking about it. And again, you're going to be talking about this in your tutorials over the coming weeks. But I also want you can look this up, you can think about that. I'm going to post that sample essay for you. You can see how the person in that essay has used Peel to use the point, which is the topic sentence, explain, elaborate, give examples, and then provide that link. It is really, really important that you have a clear, cohesive argument and an essay structure. One of the things, again, when you're getting to that so what, and the now what, is to have a really strong conclusion. In this example, you can see, because of the colour coding that matches the introduction, this person has taken those the thesis statement and kind of rejiggered that to be a kind of a concluding statement about the thesis. And then there's a statement that's pertinent to each of the arguments. I'll leave it to you to have a good look at that to see how that's been crafted. And it's important to say that this is just a sample. There's more than one way to do this, but people have been asking for some ideas to make a start, and this is what this is. You have your own writing style, I'm sure, and so you shouldn't abandon that to follow this slavishly. It's just an idea. Referencing, please be sure to adhere to the APA 6 style. You can distract the reader by not doing this well. Your markers will notice this. It's just something that we're tuned into. So make sure that you have in-text, direct and indirect citations appropriately annotated. The reference list, which should be a separate page at the end of your essay, should be noted. Only what you use in the body of your essay. It's not a bibliography. There's a fantastic referencing guide on the SCU library site. I recommend that you have that open whilst you're working through the edits on your references. It covers absolutely everything, including how to cite the learning materials, these videos, personal correspondence that you might have had with someone on your immersion experience. So don't sort of put that in the too hard basket. It's quite easy to follow and access that information. Really important part at the end, once you're happy with the way that you've put your essay together, don't forget to edit and proofread it. Go get the checklist, the criteria checklist, and make sure that you've ticked off all of those elements. Is it critical? Is it reflective? Is it informed? Because at this stage, before you've submitted, you can go back and add some of that so what and now what. You can also add some citations and references if you don't think you have enough. Really important that you use the readings and the text as primary sources. Please don't just Google terms and put in blogs, because they're not credible sources and you will be marked down for doing so. Check common style errors, unsubstantiated claims. So you might say, I think education should be free for everybody, and so does the government. Well, you can think that and make that claim, but to say the government does, you would need to substantiate that by associating that with some policy. And be sure that all of the arguments link together nice and tightly. So if at the end of this video and you've had a crack at all of these things and you're still looking for help, you're not on your own. We've got weeks of tutorials ahead. Ask your tutor, bring your ideas to the tutorials. We can guide, we can advise, and we can suggest, but what we cannot do is provide one-on-one sessions or proofread your drafts. The staff and academic skills can help you on that front, but you can help yourselves also by forming a study group, a group of interested people to thrash out and exchange ideas. I find that they're often the most powerful agents of change and really positive working experiences. If you want some of that help online, you can click on the link to academic skills and or the Studiosity link in the learning site to find a range of really helpful and useful resources. Well, I hope this little video helps to get you started and on your way. Looking forward to reading and hearing about your wonderful takeaway messages from this unit.